All right, just a couple housekeeping things before I get started. We are going to have you put your questions in the Q&A. So if anybody has a question or anything, please put that in the Q&A, and Chris and Samantha are going to be answering those questions. At the end, we'll also have them pick out a couple questions that they felt were either asked frequently or just are important for us to talk about out loud, and they'll go ahead and answer those out loud. Next, like I said, I am going to be recording this presentation, so a recording will be available on our office YouTube channel within the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. You're going to get an email tomorrow thanking you for attending the presentation and asking you to complete a brief survey, just so we can see what we did right, maybe things we can improve on, so that we can continue assisting you and making sure that the financial aid process is a smooth one for all students and families. All right, so now without further ado, I'm going to get started on the presentation. What we're all here for, financing your Stockton education. At this point in the process, we have everybody kind of in different stages. Some people may have applied already, some may not have. You may have gotten your financial aid offer already, you may not have. So I'm going to be going over a wide range of topics today. I also think it's super important just to get an idea of the entire financial aid process, to better be able to understand the entire process from start to finish. All right, so I did already introduce myself, but to begin, I just want to go over a few of the things that I'm going to be talking about today. All right, so what is aid? What aid is available, excuse me, and where does that aid come from? How do I apply for financial aid? What are my costs, and how do I cover my costs? Okay, understanding the sources of financial aid. So that's where your aid actually comes from. The two sources of financial aid, the sources of financial aid are the federal and the state governments and university and private entities. And these sources provide two different types of aid. Those are gift aid and self-help aid. So of course, gift aid is everybody's favorite kind, free money that does not have to be paid back. And then we have self-help aid. So that includes loan options. Loans, of course, have to be paid back with interest. And then employment opportunities, so working and earning a paycheck. All right, then just to dive a little bit deeper into the types of financial aid that those sources provide, we have the federal Pell Grant, federal work study, and federal direct loans. The federal government is pretty diversified in the types of aid that they offer. So you have gift aid and self-help aid as well. Then we have state aid, the tuition aid grant, the Garden State Guarantee, the Educational Opportunity Fund grant, and New Jersey Stars 1 and 2. Most gift aid from the state. Aid from the university includes grants and scholarships. So grants being the Stockton Promise as one, and then scholarships based on merit as well as extracurricular achievement. Once you apply, you're automatically considered for those admissions merit scholarships. And you'll be notified via your scholarship notification letter with your application acceptance, and it'll also be included on your financial aid offer. Okay, a private aid would include private scholarships as well as private loans. All right, so just to get started, I want to dive a little bit deeper into a few of these aid programs, specifically Stockton scholarships. So at Stockton, we look at not only academic success, so GPA, we also look at extracurricular achievement as well. So some of the things we ask for: official high school transcripts, extracurricular activities, so work, volunteerism, family responsibilities, social and community clubs or organizations, and any other meaningful experiences to the student. We also ask for a student to write their essay and letters of recommendation. And how to apply, like I said, you just apply through your Stockton application, and then we'll determine your eligibility there. Okay, the Stockton Promise. This is a grant program through Stockton. It covers 100% of the gap between federal, state, and institutional financial aid, so grants and scholarships, that gift aid, and the cost of tuition and fees for qualifying students. The grant is available to New Jersey residents with 0 to 59 earned credits, so that's usually our first and second year students, whose family adjusted gross income is between 0 and 65,000. You apply each year by filing a FAFSA or the New Jersey Alternative Application if the student is a New Jersey Dreamer. And more information, eligibility criteria and all of that is available at stockton.edu/promise if you want to learn more about that program. The Garden State Guarantee is similar to the Stockton Promise, but it's administered through the state of New Jersey. So similarly, like I said, it's a last dollar program created to assist New Jersey residents in affording the cost of their education. It offers assistance covering the gap between a student's federal, state, institutional, and private grants and scholarships and the cost of their tuition and fees. So it functions very similarly to the Stockton Promise. The grant is available to New Jersey residents with 60 to 128 earned credits, which is typically our third and fourth year students whose family adjusted gross income meets the criteria outlined by the state of New Jersey. And again, you would apply each year by filing the FAFSA or the New Jersey Alternative Application. And more information, eligibility criteria, all of that is available at stockton.edu/GSG. You can also access all of this information via our main financial aid homepage of the Stockton website. So if you just go to stockton.edu and search financial aid, there's a sources of financial aid page that explains in detail each aid program. Okay, quickly, I just want to talk about EOF as well. This would be something that when you apply, or if you've already applied, you can contact admissions about. But this is something separately that you check off to be considered for when applying to Stockton. But the New Jersey Educational Opportunity Fund ensures meaningful access to higher ed to those from educational disadvantaged backgrounds. So disadvantaged backgrounds educationally and economically. EOF students receive counseling, financial, and other support services to ensure success at Stockton. Just some of the benefits of EOF. Free college credits are earned, free calculator rentals, access to support services around campus, as well as funding. Here is the eligibility chart for EOF. So gross income can't exceed the numbers listed within this chart based on household size, as well as there is an asset cap. So if you think you may qualify, I would definitely reach out to your admissions counselor to see if there's any way to update your application and then see if you qualify. Okay, so now we talked about the types of aid, the sources of aid, where they come from. We'll talk about applying. Like I said, I know that some of you and probably many of you have already applied, but I do want to cover everything just for those who maybe haven't yet. So how do I apply for financial aid? U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens will file the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA, each year to determine their eligibility for federal, state, and some institutional aid programs. The FAFSA has typically been available each October 1st, and it should be going forward. We had a couple years here where there were updates to the FAFSA and that date changed a little bit, but now it is written into law that it must be available October 1st. So look out for that application next October 1st. The 25-26 FAFSA is available now, though, at FAFSA.gov if you haven't filed. New Jersey Dreamer students are not eligible for federal student aid, but could be considered for state aid. New Jersey Dreamers will complete the New Jersey Alternative Application at HESA.org each year to determine their state and institutional aid eligibility. That application for 25-26 is also available currently at HESA.org. Please also note that even if you're not a New Jersey Dreamer, you will probably hear of HESA. If you're a New Jersey resident, because they also determine state aid eligibility for New Jersey residents who are U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens. Okay, the first step in applying, if you're filing a FAFSA, is creating a studentaid.gov account. To do that, you would go to studentaid.gov and select create account. Something I do just want to note for anybody who hasn't created their account yet or applied for aid, parents without a social security number are now able to create an FSA ID after completing the identity verification process. For the 25-26 FAFSA only, parents without a social security number will be able to create an FSA ID or studentaid.gov account and complete their section of the FAFSA without completing the identity verification process. However, they should still attempt to do so. But if it's not working, there have been some technical glitches and things with the updates to the FAFSA, they will still be able to bypass that and complete that so that they can assist their student in completing the FAFSA. All right, next would be actually completing the FAFSA. So what is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid? It uses demographic and financial information, including family size and income and assets from the student and family to determine a student's aid eligibility. Some colleges also use the information from the FAFSA to determine eligibility for institutional aid. As I said, it typically opens October 1st. The class of 2025 seniors are going to complete the 25-26 FAFSA now. Anybody who is the class of 2026 will complete the 26-27 FAFSA beginning October 1st of 2025. And I do just want to note for future, and if I have any transfer students listening, the FAFSA needs to be filed by April 15th, typically each year. For first year students, that application technically doesn't have to be done for anybody who's class of 2025 this year until September 15th. Of course, you want to do it now just to see what your aid eligibility is. But for future going forward, if you receive the state tuition aid grant or the Stockton Promise, you have to file by April 15th of each year in order to be considered for those programs for the following year. So everybody's good right now, for the most part, as long as you're not a transfer student coming in and looking to and have received TAG in the past. If you have, then you have to have your FAFSA done by April 15th. Okay, so what is FAFSA simplification? The FAFSA changed last year, was the first year. So this is the second FAFSA with the changes. The U.S. Department of Education is currently still in the process of finalizing their major overhaul of all of the processes and systems used to offer federal student aid. That started, like I said, last year. And the goal is really for a simpler FAFSA. And in the experiences that I think everybody in our office has had, the actual application process for majority of students has been simpler. It hasn't taken very long to complete. Now we do have students who haven't been able to get through due to like technical issues or things like that, and we've had to find workarounds for them, but the overall goal was to simplify the FAFSA. So just some things you should know before filing, or even after. The student aid index is the number schools use to determine the need-based aid for which students may be eligible. It's not how much a student is receiving or how much is owed to the school. So students and families don't need to pay too much attention to this number. In general, it's just good to note that the lower the number, which it can go to negative 1,500, the more likely you're going to be eligible for need-based aid. The higher that number, the less likely. Something also to note that the FAFSA is contributor-based. Students must invite their parents or their spouse, if independent, to contribute their information to the FAFSA. All contributors will complete their sections separately. If parents are married and file their tax returns separately or are unmarried and living together, both parents need to complete the process and will have to be invited as contributors. All contributors have to complete their sections of the application for a student's FAFSA to be submitted. Dependent students will start their section of the FAFSA and add their parents as contributors by entering their name, date of birth, social security number, and an email into the application. And contributors will receive an email asking them to log into the FAFSA using their own studentaid.gov account. And if they don't have one, they'll have to create one. All contributors also have to consent for the use of the direct data exchange, which transfers tax data into the FAFSA directly from the IRS. This is required even if the student and the parents and or did not file a tax return. Without consent, students won't be considered for federal student aid or be eligible to receive an SAI. So you need to make sure you're doing that. It's a super simple process. It gives you a lot of words, paragraphs and paragraphs worth of things to read. And then the bottom, it says, I agree. So you have to select the I agree in order for that to process. Some things you would need to complete the FAFSA, potentially. Some people don't if the direct data exchange works correctly. But 2023 1040s for the student and the parent, as well as W-2s and 1099s. Also important to remember that the FAFSA uses prior year to determine aid eligibility, prior year income. So the 25-26 FAFSA uses 2023 income information. The 26-27 FAFSA will use 2024 and so on. Something also needed would be records of child support received, current balances of cash, savings, and checking accounts, and the net worth of investments, businesses, and farms. The latter two are current as of the day that you're filing the FAFSA. That's when it wants to know what the values of those are. Okay, just really quickly also to touch on what parents are reported on the FAFSA. If parents are married or unmarried and living together, then both parents' information is required on the FAFSA. If the student's biological or adoptive parents are married and reside in the same household, both of their information is reported on the FAFSA. If they're unmarried and living together, same. Gets a little trickier with divorce or separation. The custodial parent is the one reported on the FAFSA in the case where a student's parents are divorced or separated. The custodial parent is the parent who provides more than 50% of the student's support. If both provide equal support, then the parent with a greater income or assets is reported. So in the case where parents are divorced and the custodial parent is actually remarried, both the custodial parent and the step parent's information is reported on the FAFSA. The other biological parent's information is not reported. This is also important to note where some confusion comes in. So we talked about how the FAFSA requires prior year information. So say that the custodial parent was not remarried in that year. So in say 2023, they were not remarried, but they're married now when the FAFSA is filed. Their spouse's information from 2023 is still required on the FAFSA. So they'll have to add their spouse, and the spouse will have to add their information, and it'll kind of be treated as a filed separately situation. But their information is still required because the current family size includes them. If parents are divorced and the custodial parent is not remarried, then the custodial parent is the only parent reported on the FAFSA. That other biological parent does not go on there. Unusual circumstances. So any student who has an unusual circumstance, and there are several questions listed on the FAFSA, if they can't answer yes to any of those questions, they're not considered independent, but the federal government recognizes that there may be some unusual circumstances that the student may have that they're unable to provide parent information on the application. They're able to select that option, and then they'll work with the school to determine if they're actually going to be considered independent or if they'll have to put parent information on the FAFSA. So it's important to note that the student is going to get what's called a provisional SAI, as if they are independent, but they have to work with the school in order to actually have their aid processed. And then they'll receive an actual SAI when all of that goes through. Okay. Next in the process would be determining state aid eligibility. I do just want to note also, because at this point, the FAFSA would have been filed, right, after this part of the presentation. Once we receive your FAFSA, you'll receive an email from our office letting you know that we have received it, and your aid offer will come shortly after. Not every, like for right now, that would happen, but like next year, if you file in October, you won't get an aid offer right away. We do need time to process everything and update our systems. But currently, if you were to file the FAFSA now, you'll get an email, and then your aid offer will come shortly after. All right, so determining state aid eligibility. If you're a New Jersey resident, the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority is also going to receive a copy of your FAFSA. New Jersey residents who attend a New Jersey college or university are considered for state aid programs. Students can view their state aid eligibility and submit any additional documentation requested by the state on their njfams.hisa.org account. If you've never created an account with HISA, you can go ahead and do so at that website, and then it will link to your FAFSA, and then you'll be able to view all of that information there. All right, the last step in the process of actually applying for aid is completing any outstanding requirements that you may have. HISA will request their own requirements, which is why I say make that HISA account, the NJFAMS account. But the school collects requirements on behalf of the federal government, as well as anything else that we need to process your aid. You want to familiarize yourself with the Go Stockton portal. This is a screenshot of the financial aid tab. This is where you can actually view your financial aid requirements. We are very good about emailing students, texting, calls, all of that. Emails go out weekly if you have requirements, but it's always good to check this portal as well. So you will go to the financial aid requirements button on the left-hand side here. You would click that, enter the aid year, and it'll list out everything that you need to complete if you need to complete anything. Okay, and then this is the login page to the NJFAMS account. So this is where you would view any state requirements. Okay, so now we've talked about applying for aid. So we know what aid's available, we've applied. Now we're questioning, what are the costs? Okay, so the cost of attendance. This is something that I wish the federal government would have changed for FAFSA simplification, because it's a little bit confusing of a name. The cost of attendance is actually comprised of two pieces. We have direct costs, which are things like tuition and fees, housing and meals if you're going to live on campus, things that the university will directly bill you for, and indirect costs or indirect expenses. So these are things that you might incur as a result of attending school. So if you're a commuter, you're gonna have to pay more in gas, or wear and tear on your car. Books are not included, so you're gonna have to purchase books, things like that. Just to realize that it costs more to go to school than just tuition and fees and potentially housing and meals. You can think of direct costs kind of like your bill, whereas indirect costs or indirect expenses are things that we're not going to bill you for. So when you get your aid offer and you see the total cost of attendance, it might look a little bit larger than what you were thinking. That is just because it includes direct costs as well as indirect expenses. This is, if you haven't received one already, some of you maybe have. This is what the email looks like when you receive your aid offer. So there will be a link within this email to view your custom aid offer. So you'll click that, and then you'll be brought to your aid offer. So this is a sneak peek for some, or maybe a refresher for others, but I will go over some of the components to this aid offer. So we'll go over your direct costs, like I said, and then we will go over any free money that you're eligible for. So any type of grant or scholarship that you've been offered from the federal or state government or the institution will be listed there. Next, we'll go over indirect expenses, and then there's where that total estimated cost of attendance comes into play. If you want to get an idea of what you may owe the university and take out those indirect expenses, what you'll do is you'll look at the cost of tuition and fees, and then you can view housing and meal plan options on our bill estimator to kind of get an idea of what those costs might be for you. And that's really personalized to you because you can play around on that calculator. And then you'll subtract whatever free money you're eligible for, and that will be around a good estimate of what you may end up owing the university. Okay, so now after you determine your costs, how will you cover those costs? So there are a few different options. I like to just present this as a little illustration. So we have direct costs, indirect costs, your financial aid, what your financial aid covers, and then the gap. So how are we going to cover that gap? We need to find some way. Okay, so within your aid offer, we do present you if you're eligible for any federal direct loans. Typically, students are after filing the FAFSA. First-year students are typically eligible for $5,500 in these loans, which is probably not enough to cover the gap. It could be for some, but for some it may not be. So additional ways to cover are also presented. All right. The first thing I want to talk about is scholarship opportunities because, of course, this is everybody's favorite kind, free money. So where can we find opportunities? They are everywhere. Right now is a great time to start applying. There's a lot of scholarships out there that are available. The applications are open. First, your local organization. So, for example, your local Rotary Club may have a scholarship available. The student on the left here pictured, he applied for a scholarship from his local Rotary Club and received a laptop. So that took away from some of that indirect expense that he could have incurred. Scholarship search sites are also great, something like FastWeb, where you can search based on different characteristics that you may have or interests that you may have for different scholarships, because there's a scholarship for everything these days. Your high school guidance counselors are great resources to search for scholarships. What happens is a lot of times local organizations will come to the high schools and say that they want to offer one or a few of their students scholarships, and then you'll apply with your guidance counselor. So definitely check those out as well. Yours or your parents' employers. So another thing that people don't realize, because most people don't ask, is that either your employer or your parents' employer may offer some type of tuition benefit or a scholarship or something. So definitely something to ask an HR about. The student on the right here, she worked for Chick-fil-A and she received a $20,000 scholarship. I'm not saying that everyone is necessarily as generous as that one was, but there are opportunities out there, and I think that that illustrates that. And then Stockton. So if you haven't applied yet, you'll be considered for our admissions merit scholarships as well. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about are loans, which is probably not everybody's favorite topic. I really do like this topic though, because I like making sure that our students and families are educated on loans. Borrowing is not something to be afraid of. Many students have to borrow or take out loans to help cover the costs of their education. That's just a reality. The important thing is to make sure that we're borrowing responsibly. The different types of loans available, we have federal direct loans, which are the loans offered through filing the FAFSA. We do usually recommend that students take those loans before any type of private loan because the interest rate is usually a lot lower than most private loans, and I'll get into that in a second. Then there are private or alternative education loans. Those are going to be with banks, credit unions, anybody who will lend to you, really. And then Parent Direct Plus loans are also an option. These loans are solely in the parent's name. And if there is like a divorce situation or something, it could be the parent who's not on the FAFSA that borrows one of these loans. It just has to be a parent of the student. But Parent Plus loans are also an option. Like I said, don't be afraid of borrowing, just be informed and responsible. Understand interest rates and repayment, how all of that works, which I am going to present an example to you in a second, but just something to note. And as well as not over borrowing, that's something that we see. And the cost of attendance is kind of in place for that. It kind of acts as a budget. So we can't offer you a loan more than what the cost of attendance is minus your other aid. So you can't just take out a $500,000 loan. I know that's extreme, but you can't just take that out because you were approved for it. There are limits on that. But if you don't need the money, I wouldn't recommend borrowing more. Just because you're going to end up repaying that with interest, it's going to end up costing a lot more than what you're seeing initially. So this is an example that I like to bring up just because I've seen this a lot throughout my years. Your total costs for the year, so this is the example, your total costs for the year are $30,000, but you received $10,000 in free money. You're unable to make any payments, so now you need to borrow the rest. So you'd be borrowing $20,000 in loans. 20,000 minus that 5,500 that I talked about in those federal direct loans leaves you having to borrow 14,500 in a private loan. The $5,500 at a 5.5% interest rate, which is what the interest is currently this year, will cost you $7,162.73 over 10 years, which is the standard repayment for federal loans. $14,500 at a 9.99% interest rate, which is kind of the average, I would say. I've seen higher, I've seen lower for education loans, but that's kind of an average or a good point, I would say, to start with. That'll cost you $45,770.67 over 30 years, which is one of the repayment options for private loans. Your total to repay on the $20,000 in loans is $52,933.40. I'm showing this not to scare you, just to help you understand. The next scenario would be you decide that you want to borrow all $20,000 in a private loan. And I've heard this many, many times with parents or students say that they don't want to borrow multiple loans. They only want to borrow everything in one loan and just have one thing to repay. So they borrow that $20,000 at a 9.99% interest rate. That's going to cost you $63,131.95 over 30 years. So instead of taking part of a loan with a lower rate and then the other part with the higher rate, you're taking it all at the higher rate. And that's going to cost you over $10,000 over the years of repayment. So that's just something to think about when looking at this, not only to illustrate the interest rate and how that kind of works and how you have to repay more than you borrowed, but the difference in the rates and what that can make. So that's not only for borrowing your federal direct loans, but also making sure that you're searching for loans with lower rates, with the best terms for you, of course. So some may want you to begin repayment right away, which is not feasible for everybody. So you may not want to go with that lender, but if you find a lender that's offering you a lower rate with a term that you think you can handle, then you want to think about going with something like that. So that was just to illustrate that point. All right. Finally, I want to talk about payment plan options. So Stockton does offer payment plan options. Start saving now. Any contribution you can make towards your education now will save you money later. So if any of our students or prospective students, accepted students, have part-time jobs or anything, make sure that you're saving that money up so that you are able to help put some of that towards your potentially your bill or that gap that we talked about. Like I said, working a part-time job could help cover some of your expenses. If you would like to do that starting, your semester out at Stockton as well, you definitely can. There are jobs on campus available, even if you're not a federal work study student. Work study would be offered to you with your financial aid offer. If you're not a work study student, that's fine. There are jobs on campus where offices will hire students out of their budget who are not work study. You can also wait. You don't have to do that your first semester. You could wait and do that in semesters in the future, but important to note that that's an option. Stockton bills per semester and offers payment plans of up to 5 payments each semester. So whatever you're seeing that you may end up owing for the year, you would break that into 2 and then take advantage of our payment plans to make payments towards your bill. Okay. Something else I want to mention is you can use all of the different options to help cover whatever balance you have. So whatever your balance is, if you decide that you can contribute X amount towards it throughout the semester, you can split that into 5 payments. You can utilize whatever aid or scholarships are available. That's automatically applied anyway. But then if you need to borrow the rest, you can do that as well. So like I showed with that interest example, obviously the less you're borrowing, the less you're going to have to pay back and the interest that's going to accrue. So if you decide that you want to contribute X amount and borrow the rest, that'll end up saving you money as well. So you can use all of the options, and I recommend doing that. The only time I don't recommend doing that is if you can just pay out of pocket yourself. Otherwise, I would definitely do all of those options. Even the smallest amount that you're putting into it, if you can split that up over 5 months, that'll save you a lot of money. All right, some tips and tricks. Keep price and cost in mind when selecting a school. Use our net price calculator and our bill estimator to get an estimate of your costs. Save, like I mentioned. Apply for as many scholarships as possible because they definitely add up. Have all of your tax documents on hand when completing your financial aid applications. Inquire about federal work study or other opportunities while in school. Rent any textbooks that you can. I have so many textbooks from college that I never opened after class. And I thought that I would, and they were for my major, but I don't really reuse them. So try to rent if you can. Don't overborrow. Keep track of your federal borrowing history. You can do that at studentaid.gov. And then follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X for important information, updates, tips, and tricks. We have our social media out there to really push information to you to make sure that you're aware of deadlines, to make sure that you're aware of certain financial aid regulations and things. So if you would like, you can give us a follow just to stay up to date on that kind of stuff. And then here are just some helpful resources for the federal government, the state government, and our financial aid office as well. If you have any questions at all, you can either give our office a call, you can schedule a phone appointment with a staff member, you can email us. We are open 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, and we are here to help you with any question that you have and help you just navigate the process. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you apply. If you go to stockton.edu/apply, that's where you'll be able to start your application. And also, if you haven't, or if you'd like to come back, be sure to visit us. We have our Discover Stockton open house on Sunday, March 23rd. And then for our admitted students, we have our Experience Stockton Day, Admitted Student Day on Saturday, April 5th. Both are really fun events where we're super excited to host you. We want you to learn all about Stockton, all there is to offer. Our office will be there to answer any questions that you have. And if you can't make it, we also offer in-person and virtual tours on different dates. And that about wraps it up. I am now going to pass it on to Chris, our Director of Financial Aid here at Stockton, to go over a couple questions that he felt were either asked frequently or that he just wants to share with the group, because they're important.
Thanks, Maria-Elena. This group did a very good job, and I've done my best to try to keep up with them. It appears that a lot of the questions, I think almost all the questions were in the chat, not the Q&A, but that's just fine. because I was able to use emojis and links and all those fun things. Some of the questions that we got. Let's start from the very first one that it's not so much the question, but just some additional advice that I had provided. Um, uh, just so everybody knows, we did go over a lot of financial aid opportunities for students coming into Stockton upon entry, upon admissions, completion of the admissions application and the FAFSA, the financial aid application. Just so everybody is aware, there are opportunities for students when you continue through Stockton, whether it be your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year. It's this program that we call Foundation Scholarships. Foundation is through our development office. This is money raised through donors, local businesses, um, alumni, just very generous people that just don't know what to do with their money, but support students here at the university. So whether you receive some financial aid already, if you've been informed, if you've received something, or if you haven't, if you didn't receive the financial aid that you thought you would, do know that this isn't the end of the line for financial aid opportunities, that there may be additional opportunities when you return. My advice is get some credits on your belt, do well in those courses. I believe you need one letter of recommendation from a faculty member. So of your 4 classes you're taking for the semester, just find one that will write a good letter for you. One application makes you eligible for the thousands, I want to say 1,000 scholarships that are available to students. They can range from 1,000. It could be you could be awarded multiple scholarships, but they range from $1,000 to possibly a couple $1,000 just for one award. So do keep that in mind. We received a question, speaking of offer notifications. I mentioned if you received it yet or not. We have begun sending out offer notifications for students that have been admitted and completed a financial aid application from up until I'd say the beginning of February. We have begun sending them out. We have not finished, but we continue to roll them out. So if you haven't received anything yet from us and you're a little concerned, by all means, contact our office. There may be a reason, there may be something that we are troubleshooting where it's kind of institutional action is needed. But if it's a situation where it's student action is required, we'll be certainly supportive to help you complete those requirements. So do stay tuned, monitor your emails. The student, we're sending it to the student emails. So do have your student stay on top of their emails and monitor them as they continue to roll out. Okay. Um, we had questions about Stockton Promise and Garden State Guarantee. Is there a separate application for that? No, there's not. The application for that is the financial aid application, whether it be the FAFSA or the New Jersey Alternative Application. Those are strictly for New Jersey residents. And with those applications, it goes by income, as Maria Elena had mentioned in this presentation. So it's automatic. We look at that information, we review eligibility, and then we will inform students through the offer notification. Let's just see. I did reply to some people privately. There's some things I just didn't want to answer publicly. So I took your information down. We will get back to you tomorrow. If I didn't get back to you, if you have any questions that are still out there, like I said, I'm trying to do my best to get it back to as many people as possible. If I didn't get back to you, do reach out to us as early as tomorrow. Send us an email, give us a phone call. If either of those options don't work, try the other option. If you're calling and you don't hear from us, send us an email, and vice versa. I am getting a few questions about out-of-state residents, which is awesome. Do know that, yes, there may be opportunities that you might not be eligible for due to residency. However, do understand that there are opportunities as an out-of-state resident. One of our biggest opportunities is the out-of-state scholarship, which covers any difference in tuition as families may know, whether you're looking at us or any out-of-state college for my New Jersey residents. In most cases, when you attend a college or university out of state, the tuition is higher. Stockton University, in effort to make it more affordable for out-of-state residents, we provide a differential scholarship. So any difference in tuition as an out-of-state student, it's covered. Okay, there is a GPA requirement for that, so do be aware of that. That I recommend reaching out to admissions, as well as any other possible scholarship opportunity for you. Be aware of that. I'm actually just scrolling down. I'm seeing the most recent question from a Matthew. Is Sally Mae direct aid? Sally Mae is a loan it's an additional loan. It's a private loan. Might be a common name to a lot of people, but it is a private loan, one of many private lenders that are offered out there. So do shop around and compare. As I tell everybody, like any big expense, like a home, like a car, like a wedding, shop around, compare rates, compare benefits and fees and things like that. But yes, Sally Mae is a form of financial aid. Uh, I did get a question about some families that are receiving their offer notification. They see their expenses of tuition and fees, but they see their indirect expenses of housing, meaning it's not on their bill yet when they've applied for housing. So just so families know, without getting into the weeds too much, we will be updating offer notifications for all families. If you've applied for housing and you've completed the process from application to contract to deposit with our housing department, we will be updating your offer notification to include those expenses, as well as updating any financial aid that you will be eligible for with those added on-campus expenses. Okay. When will we begin that? We're hoping we can begin those updates starting next month, March, which is actually in a couple days. We're hoping that month we'll begin those updates. Let me see. Just I want to take the time to scroll through some questions that I haven't been able to answer just yet. And I see Maria Lane, you're chipping away at some of those questions as well.
Chris, just while you're doing that real quick, I just want to emphasize too that when we send an aid offer, it is contingent upon the completion of all requirements, which is why I mentioned that in the slides previously, that you have to make sure that you complete all of your requirements with us and with the state. But I did just want to also mention, if you haven't received an aid offer and you think that you should have, definitely reach out to our office. There are certain requirements that actually prevent us from sending you an aid offer until those are completed. Things where we have to verify citizenship or high school completion or things like that. We're not actually able to offer aid until that requirement is satisfied. Other things, other like tax related things that we have to monitor or audit or something like that, we can offer aid as, contingent upon completion of all requirements. But that's just something to note as well, that might be something you want to look into. If you have any requirements, make sure that you're submitting those so that we can process your aid.
Yeah. I'm going to answer a question from Gerald. This is a very common question, not to put Gerald on the spot. It's a very good question. It's a question we often get a lot every single year. When is the FAFSA deadline? I may have missed it. Just so this group knows, you didn't miss a deadline. Um, uh, there is no FAFSA deadline per se. So it's not too late to apply, especially for next fall, for fall 2025. That application is still open. If you haven't started it yet, what I recommend, when you go into the FAFSA, fafsa.gov or studentaid.gov, when you start the application, be sure to look for the 25-26 application. If you're coming in fall, that's what you want to complete. The deadline that I want everybody to pay attention to, there is a FAFSA deadline for fall, but it's not until like next year. So by then, I hope everybody begins the process. The deadline that I need everybody to be mindful of here and wherever you may choose to go is the payment due date. Okay, obviously, we need to get the FAFSA done if needed as soon as possible because we need to load that into the Stockton system and we need to communicate that to our bursar's office, the cashier's office, if you will, all the financial aid that you're eligible for. So how does it work at Stockton? Typically, the payment due date is usually the first week of August, which is a month before classes start. If I were to give you any deadline, we want to get it done well before August. Okay, so once again, application is still open. Get in the FAFSA as soon as possible so we can work on anything that Maria Elena just mentioned, that there may be requirements of students. So just because you got the FAFSA done, the financial aid application done, doesn't mean that's the end of the line. You might get tripped up with the state requirements or federal requirements or anything that isn't completing the application on our side. So I hope that helps. I'm going to go to the question above. His name is Chris. It's a great name. Love the name. We've already received our financial aid offer. Great. Check that off. Would the NJ FAM's info have been included in that? So it's an excellent question. Um, Typically, how this works is families do the federal application, the FAFSA. And when you do that, that information, before it comes here to Stockton or any other school that you're applying to, you do the federal financial aid application. That information gets sent to the federal government. It makes a stop there. You include all the schools on that application that you're looking to attend, that you hope to attend. But then from there, before it comes to Stockton or any other school, it goes to the state of New Jersey. Okay. With that said, I might have just answered your question there. They automatically receive your information, the state of New Jersey. So there is no separate application for state aid or NJ FAMS, what you're referring to. It gets there through the FAFSA, or for those that are doing the alternative application, they receive it as well. So yes, it should include state information. Just be sure to monitor any requirements, as Maria Elena had mentioned, with the federal government and state government with that. So I hope that answers your question. Just scrolling up, I received a question from Alex. If we make less than 100,000 a year, or any family, do we get 2/3 off of tuition? What I believe families are referring to, going back to income-based financial aid, not through any methodology, but if it says if you make this much money, you're covered. What you're referring to, if you might be referring to Stockton Promise. Stockton Promise is for $65,000, $0 to $65,000. For those families, the tuition and fees are covered in full if there's any remaining gap after the application of scholarships and grants. Okay, so any remaining grant that will be covered in full. Okay, $65,000 or less. I'm looking for 6 new messages. They're coming in, but hopefully it might be Maria Elena's response, and I see Samantha's helping us as well. Isn't I am getting a question about this was directly to me, so I won't say the name. Um, Yes. So this is an excellent question. I'll read it out loud to everybody. Isn't there a high school graduation requirement in New Jersey to apply for the FAFSA anyway? Um, Great question. Thanks for you for reminding everybody in this group that is from the state of New Jersey. Yes, there is a requirement. It is a graduation requirement through the state of New Jersey that your high school counselors must assist you with, graduating seniors. So you must get that done. So it was mentioned about requirements of completing the application if you are receiving scholarships. So hopefully you can complete the process with your high school, and then with that, we'll receive that information as well, and we'll be able to complete that requirement the FAFSA requirement as well. Let's see. Anything else? Well, I just got a shout out that I did answer a question, so that's good. Chris is being helpful tonight. Excellent. I think, and I apologize if there's anybody that I may have missed in the chat. I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm just scrolling through the series of questions here. But I believe I myself, as well as my two teammates here tonight, have gotten everybody's question. Either we typed it in or we answered it live.
I think we're getting a couple more in, Chris.
And I'm getting a few
Um,
direct ones, which is perfectly cool. There's some privacy to it. So let's just go over because I am seeing a theme with just different individuals of asking a common question that I'm seeing. For those that have received an offer notification, or if you haven't received it yet and it's coming, I'm just going to go over one thing. And Maria Elena did talk about this, so I'm just going to reiterate it to everybody. And I understand it's confusing. A lot of the things we do in our office, we're told to do by the federal government or the state government. It's not a Stockton thing. But just going back to cost of attendance. And if anybody's been in my open house sessions here at Stockton, I apologize if I repeat myself, but I kind of do it with a sense of humor. Um, you'll see what's called a cost of attendance. And for a lot of families, when they're shopping around at colleges, doing their research, the campus tours, collecting information through the websites, a lot of them say, wait a second, this cost of attendance is a lot higher than what I was told by somebody else at the college or university. Especially in most cases, our friends in admissions, those admissions people, they told us this cost was this, but then I'm seeing this cost of attendance on the offer notification. It's a lot higher. This doesn't make any sense. And quite honestly, they usually like the admissions number because it's lower. And what this is those numbers, those costs that you're getting from offices are on the website. In most cases, you're seeing the bill, the direct expenses. Okay. And here at Stockton, what I've learned when I came here as a student, you get the bill, but there's also things that are not included on the bill. For instance, books and supplies. Okay. Books and supplies vary depending on what your major is, the courses you're taking, the instructor. Some might have no books where it's kind of like open source material on through the website. But an arts course that Chris took, those are probably some of the most expensive courses with the paint, the supplies, the brushes, the charcoal, the clay, the portfolio. So what we do with cost of attendance here at Stockton, what we're required to do, all colleges and universities provide a budget, not a bill, but a budget that covers you beyond the bill, but for all those indirect expenses as well. For instance, the books and supplies. Okay. The transportation. Let's say if you're a commuter, transportation falls into it. Wear and tear of your car. Technically, that's an educational expense. You're not required to pay this, but what this does do is it ensures that financial aid that you're eligible for, it doesn't just cover your bill, but it covers those indirect expenses. Okay. Think about, I always compare this to a movie, the going to the movies. Okay. When Chris was young, when he had a full head of hair, he would always ask his parents, I need money to go to the movies. How much is the price of the ticket? And I said, well, this is how much the ticket is. And they give me money for the ticket. What financial aid is doing with the cost of attendance, we're going to make sure you're covered with the price of admission for the movie theater, not just the tickets, but for the popcorn, the added expenses of just getting into the movie theater and throwing in some popcorn as well. Okay, so understand that it's not your bill, but it's just that kind of think of it as a glass jar. We're able to cover everything up to the glass jar, including those indirect expenses. But if you need any clarity with that, Maria Elena mentioned an open house. We'll be at Admitted Students Day. Most likely, you'll be seeing me again. If you do see me again, just say, hey, I saw you at the webinar. You mentioned this. I will go over this again. We're not going to leave you alone. We'll be at orientation. We'll be counseling you through all these steps leading up to that bill due date. So um, don't stress. Don't stress too much.
For now, I'd also highly recommend using that bill estimator because
Yes.
you can kind of play around with the housing and meal plan options as well to kind of see what might work best for you.
Yeah.
First year housing is a little bit limited and meal plans are a little limited. There are only a few options. Not all of the options presented are available to first year students. But you can kind of play around with that and then you'll get an idea of what the fall semester and potentially the spring semester as well may be cost-wise for you, and you can subtract whatever free money you're eligible for and then kind of determine that gap and how you're going to cover that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the great thing about the bill estimator is you can estimate it right to your exact meal plan option that you may consider, as well as housing unit, whether you be in Atlantic City or Galloway, dorms, apartments. So you can get a lot better idea to the dollar of how much it will cost. Just a heads up for everybody. This is what it is exactly what it's called. It's a bill estimator. So come summer, that's when a lot of colleges and universities, specifically for New Jersey, state colleges, public colleges, will know exactly to the dollar come summer when we find out how much assistance we're getting from the state of New Jersey. So it may fluctuate. We do our best. We've always done our best to kind of zero in at a good rate, not being too far off. But yeah, that's probably the best tool to use at this moment is the bill estimator.
And that's going to estimate your bill, which, like we said, is your bill per semester. So just remember when you see that number, that's for one semester, not for the whole
Yes,
year. Just note
excellent
that.
point. Yep. And a great thing about it to do too is you can also, if you're looking to reduce costs, you can kind of play around and say, wait a second, if I'm being charged this, if I reduce my meal plan, or reduce my housing option, there might be a cheaper option if, depending on availability, as Maria Elena mentioned. So it's a great tool, especially if you're trying to be mindful of cost. Okay. I'm seeing a lot more thank yous coming in, and it's 7 o'clock right now. So I think this might be a good time to kind of wrap things up, Maria Elena. But as for everybody, and I also see a lot of people that came in midway or kind of three-quarters through the way through the presentation. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I will be here tomorrow, as well as our team members. So give us a call, shoot us an email. If you want to thank us that way, you can do so that as well.
Yeah, like Chris said, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It was a really beautiful night, so thanks for choosing to come online with us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You will get that email tomorrow with a link to a survey. You can or cannot take it, up to you. It just helps us in the future be able to um, determine how well we did and if we need things to improve on and all of that. And then our YouTube channel will have this recording as well on it within the next couple of days. If you just go to YouTube and search Stockton Financial Aid, you'll find it there. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Like we said, any questions, please feel free to direct them to our office. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much.